All right, everybody. I am so excited to have another episode of Hey Docs and to have my friend, Marc Bacino from Voxel on the show with us today. Mark is and has been in our industry for many years, and he is just a wealth of knowledge. And I know, Mark, you are going to really be able to give our doctors some things to think about. So thanks for being on the show today.
Jill, thanks so much for having me. Honored to be on here with you, a legend in the industry. So
Oh,
thank you
well,
so much.
yeah, thanks. So, one of the ways that I like to start off the show is I like people to know who I'm going to be talking to. So, I'm wondering in the event that people don't know who you are or don't know much about Voxel, would you mind just giving us a quick little journey of how you got in to our industry and then a little history about the company?
Sure. So back in the mid 90s, got out of college and was looking for something to do. I stepped into the loan origination business and started a little company with a buddy of mine. Sold that for a few reasons. I was under a different brokerage license, so it wasn't like huge thing, but it was time to do something different and answered an ad in the Houston Chronicle for dental sales and ran into a gentleman named Dean Kyle, who's a legend in the dental industry,
Mhm.
and jumped on board with Henry Schein through him. A little bit of time there and entered into ortho with Ormco.
Okay.
Started with them back around 2000, maybe 2001. A lot of various roles in the sales world. Spent a lot of time with Ormco,
Mm.
meeting doctors. Joined Ortho Clear back in '05 and '06. Got that, helped to get that off the ground. That was an interesting chapter in my life. Past that one, went back to Ormco for a number of years. Always enjoyed my time. That team, sales leadership roles, things of that I grew into. And then left the ortho world for a little bit more in the technology space, was the VP of North American sales for a company called E4D that was owned by Henry Schein, scanning and crown design, chairside milling. If you're
Mm.
familiar with Serica along
Yes.
those lines,
Yes.
purchased by Plan Mecca. So was with them for a little bit. And then after that, had the opportunity with some of our orthodontic friends here in Oliver Gillis, pretty much came in on the front end of OrthoFi
Hmm.
and joined them, was with OrthoFi for about 6 years,
Hmm.
where you and I really started
Yep.
doing a lot
Yep.
more together versus just
Yes.
saying hello in the halls of shows and really enjoyed it. And so that kind of takes me to where I am today. The owner of Voxel, James Bonham, I actually hired him into the orthodontic world many moons ago.
Wow.
And probably for the last decade plus, James and I have always said, hey, let's partner up. Let's work together again. And timing was never really right on either side until about not quite 2 years ago.
Hmm.
Uh, he needed some help in the ortho space because we were branching out into some niche areas of general dentistry. And that's my journey on into Voxel and having been there for a little bit now, back on the clinical and technology side and helping the efforts with Voxel Dental.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the reasons that besides just we're good friends and I just think you have such a wealth of knowledge that I really wanted you on the show is I don't think a lot of people really know about Voxel or maybe know as much. And you guys have been a real asset to me when I am working with a lot of my startups and younger doctors and they're saying, hey, I want to look at doing a dry lab or I want to look out starting off my practice completely digital. And that sounds great, but really there's a lot that goes into that. And Voxel has been really great and your team has been really great at letting me hand off docs and be like, "Hey, call Mark, call Dustin, call the guys over there and let them just at least explain a little bit about what that means and what you need to be thinking about if you're saying, "Hey, I'm gonna have a digital vision." So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind, I'm just gonna jump right in here, talking to us a little bit about when a doctor is calling, whether they're one of my startups or acquisitions or an existing practice, and they're saying, "I think now is the time. I'm wanting to move more into this digital space. Can you talk about that and how you coach and things that maybe doctors need to be thinking about or looking out for as they're getting into that?
Sure. And I think a little bit of background on Voxel to that, Jill, helps where we're coming from in those type
Yes.
of consultative
Yes.
calls. Prior to my time, Vox has been around for about 6, 7 years now. And there's a few people on our team, James, the owner being one, Michael Sterneman. They have built and had orthodontic labs. So they were owners of orthodontic labs. They built one out of the Houston area. They got heavily involved in the digital space. They actually merged with Specialty Appliances, probably the second largest lab in ortho
Yes.
lab in the country. James ran sales and marketing, a lot of business development. Michael Sterneman ran the 100+ person digital team, digital operation workflows, and really got to get their hands into printing and the whole element of digital workflow using third-party integrated softwares, printing on multiple different printers from large industrial to some of the, lesser expensive printers out there. And that knowledge really became great to them. And then a lot of customers were calling as during that time period, a lot of printers started going to the desktop and they were asking how to implement this.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the genesis of Voxel on the digital portfolio was originally printers where we didn't just sell the printer, we were able to teach and help offices implement what we knew about in the lab. So really, we want to help orthodontic offices bring as much in-house digitally as they want to or prep for that future
Mhm.
vision of what they're wanting to do. When somebody calls us from a consultative for a call, a lot of times we'll get an email or a call and they're like, hey, can you quote me on this printer or that printer? And you got to press the brakes and ask some questions.
Yes.
What is it that you're wanting to do? What do you want to do today? What do you want to do tomorrow? What's the application for that? Because it may not be what you're asking to quote me on,
Mhm.
may not necessarily be what you need. And so that's the first element of what we have to start talking about for what you want, your vision of that digital lab.
Yeah.
And the approach is a little bit different, say for your startup, because we do, having built a lab, having been in that phase, we set you up for success. We give you ancillary items that we know you'll need if you don't currently have in the lab. But we don't draw up plans. We don't build plans for the startup, but we definitely can answer questions about what you should be thinking about for the start of your practice, for what it may look like a few years from now, what we know orthodontists are going through as they add technology or need other printers, et cetera. And on That's a lot for the startup side, but for the existing side, it's not just printing, it could be the overall ROI of what you should be thinking or planning for about how this can help you produce in a market, especially when you look at this year over the past couple of years where some of the numbers show flat or slightly up, maybe
Mhm.
even slightly down on a national average with what's going on in the orthodontic space right now.
Yeah, that's great. So if you were, let's take a journey down a startup. We'll start there and we'll do a little pivot along the way here. But if a doctor were saying, "Okay, I think I want to start with the dry lab." And for anybody who maybe doesn't know what I'm talking about, for many years when we have built out orthodontic practices, usually when we think about a lab, we think about we call it a wet lab because it's usually got a sink and it's got a grinder and it's got a lathe and it's got air and all these different things. And we have come at it for years and years with this thought of we're going to be making with our hands appliances within our labs. But as our industry has been evolving, more and more of my startups, I can't even think of the last time in the last probably 2 years now, that we actually built out a startup practice with a wet lab in it. Now we're building out for more of what I would call a dry lab where we are thinking about the future. Am I going to have printers? What kind of electrical do I need? What kind of is there venting that's important or not? Things like that. And I'm wondering if you can, and again, I know you guys don't really go down that, get into design. But are there some things that you suggest if doctors are thinking about that? And I'll get into acquisitions or retrofitting something too. But would you give some advice on that if you can about some things that they should be thinking about that may be different than the traditional way that we have done it in the past?
Yeah, I think when you have a startup or maybe an existing practice is building another location or remodeling, what have you, I always want to think about space because there's a couple elements to that. Number one is going to be as you get into printing, you become to rely on it so much. There's going to be a second printer. And depending on what your goals are for the volume of what you want to do in house, it may necessitate based on schedule and same day that you, one, may be thinking in the future about a printer for redundancy,
Mhm.
because if one goes down, you need, something backing up, or just the amount of models you may be printing or how much
Mhm.
in-house that you may be doing. Staging areas for things that you want to have a little bit more space for not just post processing, but boxing and prepping and doing things with these aligners to deliver if you're doing an aspect of this in house. So the spatial component for what you want to be doing in the future is big. Just thinking of some of the traditional, but airlines, people ask me about that all the time for your thermoforming machine or split off or a second airline or something like that for just as you polish or your post processing aligners to blow off things with your appliances and such. So when it pertains just to printing, the overall element is what I'm thinking about in terms of space and future space, depending on
Mhm.
how reliant that we know this technology is going to be for you. If I'm talking to a startup, I know a lot of times like the big ticket, like we need imaging. So what do we want to go with today? We're going to definitely need a scanner. So that's something that we all know that we need. I would challenge the startup practice to think a little bit more about that printer and not just simply set on the mindset, I don't need that for 18 months to 2 years
Yeah.
as I start to
Yes.
debond. But there's such an element of production. I talked to Adam Showoff a little bit at a meeting last year. My printer literally prints money. And that's because if you're effectively finding and focusing on the right cases, you can find some limited treatment type cases that when you're a startup on from a cash flow perspective, there may very well be some opportunities in your practice to find those three or four
Yeah.
thousand dollar cases that you can do all in for less than a couple $100 to set up for potentially giving that patient what they want. And I think that's a huge element of some things that you do that give you some clinical control to make those decisions.
Yeah. I love that, and I love what you're saying there because when I'm helping practices, one of the things I'm always saying is we're planning this office for the future. So when I say, "Hey, I think we need 2 consult rooms," most of the time my doc's, "I probably won't use it," and the equipment specialist said I should just plumb out the second TC room, and I always tell them, "If you're gonna be busy enough to have your TC room full, to have your clinic full, you're definitely gonna be busy enough to not be using that second chair." And the reason I say that when I think about this in the lab component, going to what you were saying is even though you don't think you're gonna need it now, the likelihood that you will is probably pretty strong. And so thinking ahead about what could I need doesn't mean that we have to outfit it now, but what could I need can make all the difference and really save you maybe thousands of dollars instead of trying to go back in and retrofit something or pull down walls to put in new lines or this, that, or the other.
Yeah, it's even Jill, when we're talking about those things, you may not be doing it today. We help offices bring as much in-house as they want. If you want to make your own Hollies in-house and understand some pearls and tips and tricks for our salt and pepper and
Mm.
acrylic on these printed resin models. It's a little different animal than off the stone model. We even do laser welding and help with that for those
Wow.
offices who want to go that deep
Yeah.
in digitally ditching these resin models and putting bands on hair PEs, things of that sort. Again, as much as you want to bring that house, we have resources on our team and the right technologies to to offer for as deep as you want to get in that lab space. So prepping for all those thoughts and space is something to be considered on that
Yeah.
setup.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just gonna say countertops. I think for a long time, we've seen this so much in our industry. If you look at the practices in the late 90s, you have an opportunity, big labs. And then we really consolidated to it was a one but show in there. And I think that when we are looking to the future, and if you do think that is going to be part of the DNA of your practice, believe it or not, guys, we're probably moving back out to some of those bigger footprints in an office, which will again, I jokingly say countertops, but really we need room.
Yeah.
We need room to move around in there.
We do. We have a lot of customers, say in New York and LA and some of these metropolitan areas that they have smaller spaces in certain parts of the country. We get on all the time and FaceTime with these doctors and give them some ideas about what they could do or maneuver something around to actually be able to print. And it ends up being worthwhile in the end.
Yeah, that's great. So I know we're talking a lot about startups, and I think with acquisitions or existing practices, when a practice is thinking about bringing digital in and saying, "Okay, I'm on board. I think I'm willing to maybe dip my toes in the water of printing and maybe move in that direction." Do you have some best practices that you suggest in how you move or how you guys coach
Yeah.
doctors or teams to move in that direction? Because I would assume it's jump up on that high dive and dive right in. That is not what we advocate for.
Yeah. I will tell you that we use this term a lot around the office and in our conversations, and it's crawl, walk, and run.
Love it.
Because to be honest with you, if an orthodontist is never doing anything besides printing models for retainers and potentially bringing in to help them execute these retainer guarantee type programs, the ROI is off the charts. It's off the charts from the standpoint of getting the team to focus and sell those retainer guarantee programs. And it's not that you need a printer to do those, but it does help aid in executing the
Mhm,
replacement part of
mhm.
all of that process, including don't need to come in for another impression, maybe
Yes.
have it in there, mail the retainers off to Jimmy or Johnny off at college. There's a lot of things that you can do saving that extra appointment or that extra chair time. So retainers alone are enough. But what my thought process would be is to, you know, they have to consider the existing practice has to consider space and who's going to do it. And we all know for the last couple of years, staffing in an orthodontic
Mhm.
practice has been tough. How are we going to, create that? But I would think about the opportunities that it brings with what's going on in the orthodontic market today of from a production standpoint. So we
Mhm.
just hit on retainer guarantees, and that could be maybe a whole half a show by itself. But I would when people and you look in these chat rooms today, orthodontists are looking for everybody wants to grow. And we know this year has been an interesting one from a growth standpoint as a national number. There is ability to focus and take on that limited treatment and that opportunity for that parent in your office to how to communicate, maybe get them to start for a couple $100 and charge your limited treatment fee to help enhance the production. The other one that's becoming bigger and bigger in orthodontics is printing your own.
Mm.
There's always that struggle around your referring doctors and what do I take from them or what do I do myself? Where night guards is becoming more prevalent to protect those smiles, your bruxers, your grinders, a mom or dad who just needs one in the practice, where you could be very easy workflow we teach to print those in house, deliver them. And now that you're making the 3, 4, 500
Yes.
night guard for about $35 to help enhance some production. So I challenge the existing practice to think more about the potential and the ROI and how to get the team on board with some of the printing that allows so much clinical control for the doctor to make some calls. Now, the other thing that I would mention for orthodontists is when you're thinking about printing, yes, models is one, but don't get overwhelmed thinking that because you bring in a printer, like in office aligners, you have to do those all yourself. We don't necessarily teach that either because
Mhm.
Your major aligner cases, your more comprehensive cases, you don't want to create that choke point in the lab.
Right.
We Not everybody is one of these doc that does 100% of their aligners in house, but there is tremendous opportunity out there for those 10 or less cases for you to find more to do. A lot of our customers that are printing in house, their number of Invisalign or Spark or ULab
Mhm.
comprehensive type cases are not shrinking. Their focus in the practice with the whole team is finding more of these limited treatment cases that they can do because of
Yes.
what you can operate with for just minimal startup and great profit margin on a lot more limited treatment cases per month. And it's a huge deal and something people should be fast and ferociously focusing on if they aren't already in their practice looking to try to find ways to help increase production out there.
Yeah, that's such good insight, and I love it. And I just want to say it one more time what you said to everybody listening that it doesn't always mean that you're cutting out the other party company that you may be doing. What we're really doing is looking to refine and define the areas within your practice where maybe it's that low hanging fruit in the practice where you're like,
100%.
this would be a perfect case, couple the in-house doctor aligners or whatever you're gonna call them, but that perfect case where, like you said, it's costing you minimal amounts of money to do, and you don't have this big lab fee attached to it. I'm curious to know, and I don't wanna put you on the spot here, so if you're like, "Jill, I'll get back to you," you can definitely get back to me, but is there a point of return, like a price point return where docs start to, let's say, and maybe you can talk to us a little bit about, I don't want to talk about specific printers per se and price points there, but I think with anything people are always like, if I buy it, maybe it's just a hobby printer and that's okay. That there's nothing a matter with that. But is there like a return at some point where doctors say, like, I'm literally printing money because I don't I've paid back the cost of the printer, and everything I do on it now is just it's just golden. Can you
Yeah, I can. Definitely there would be printers out there that would be so astronomical to pay for it. It doesn't make sense. But I, I I wouldn't get caught up in the cost of the
Mhm,
printer. I would
mhm.
get caught up in educating yourself on the applications that you wanted to do and the best printer for that
Yes.
application. Might it be resins available for that printer application or what have you? If we were just to do some quick math on, say, a retainer guarantee program, Jill, and the TC's there, the patient's all set
Mhm.
up, you get it for $5,000. We're going to give you that beautiful smile. We're give you a couple sets of retainers to leave. But if I hear numbers from $300 to $900 adding on top of a
Mhm.
comprehensive fee
Yep,
for a 5 year or 10-year
yep.
retainer guarantee program, and the case acceptance when mom's sitting there about the finance and knows that if it's lost, maybe it can be replaced for 15, 20, $25, even a little more, I hear. They know that's going to be lost. It's almost the case acceptance is up around 80 or 90%. So if you all of a sudden on do the quick math, a 300 start practice, getting an extra $500 on 80, 90% of their cases, the ROI is
Which
there.
is why I advocate for those programs for sure.
Yeah. So to get to your question, I hope I'm answering that from the standpoint that I'm sure there are printers out there that might be so expensive not to go with. We tend not to play in those worlds. And to be
Mhm.
honest, when you get to those price points, it's more lab oriented or industrial
Yep.
printers. But
Yeah.
whether you find a $5,000 printer or a $10,000 printer, there's another popular one that we sell that's very fast. And that's an aspect we need to talk about. And
Yeah.
it's upwards of around 15. But I think in either of those categories, it's very doable on the ROI,
Yeah.
especially you find a couple limited treatment cases.
Yeah.
What I would say, because it is big, we don't really sell them because there could be a lot of service involved because they're not the grade of printers that we find a an amount of potential consistency in. But there's plenty of orthodontists out there stepping their toe in the water with a two, three, $500 printer that they purchase, and they were, but I tend to see that those are potentially more successful with doctors who love to tweak and or have a staff member that's really good at
Yeah.
recalibrating and getting in there versus just I'm going to spend a little more for some consistency and not have to worry about coming in and something's not working to keep us on schedule for the clients, that we
Yeah.
need to make today.
Yeah.
And you got to consider that too.
Yeah. And thanks for handling that. I know that was a little bit of a put you on the spot question there. And there isn't, a right or a wrong or an exact answer. But I think the point that I was just trying to make is they printers themselves, decent ones, are not crazy expensive like they used to be. We could get a good printer for five to $10,000. And really, like with anything, we look at advertising and say, hey, if I do a $5,000 campaign and I get $5,000 back, I just made it back. It doesn't take long to add up once you get past probably the crawling and getting comfortable with it to the walking stage where you're going, okay, I can see where this can be really be helping me in my practice. And even if you don't get to the point of running, even if you're just like, this is just a good way to bring in some extra cash into the practice that isn't taking a lot out of
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah, Joe, let's just get set started making same day retainers.
Mhm.
Let's find potentially down a couple of tooth movement cases. We have doctors that are not treatment planning hybrid cases, but patient wants to take the braces off. You can throw a few sets on there, complete it, or even what we call active retention. Every doctor out there that I talk to takes off the braces at one point in time and goes, man, I old spring retainer or adding something to it, or if
Yep.
it's a little positioner, like now all of a sudden you can use a third party software, design a little something and give them four and say, hey, wear this one this week and knock it out. So you bring more clinical control in what you can do to help you out and finish the case there.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk a little bit. We've been talking about the benefits. Any challenges that you think docs or teams need to be aware of if they are looking to get into? I think this is the next step in my journey of my digital journey, I'll say, because I've got startups we're starting with custom brackets and we're starting with custom aligners and we're really building with the digital mindset right from the beginning. So can you talk about any advice or things that you think doctors, teams need to be aware of that could be the challenges there?
Yeah. First, I would say, first and foremost, educate yourself. And the thing I love most about working at Voxel is that we don't sell and we don't manufacture one printer where we say this is the best and this is the reason why. Whether it's scanners, we carry multiple scanners. Whether it's imaging, we carry 5 different lines of imaging. Printers, we have 5 different printers. A lot of people pigeonhole us into the Sprint Ray category, which we love Sprint Ray, great printer. But we're able to have really upfront and educational conversations to provide you a good, better, best option for your situation and what you want
Mhm.
to do. We touched on space a little earlier today. That's one thing. The responsibility segment, I would be definitely focusing on how you can earn money or how this is going to improve the workflow in the practice. Because some of these are patient oriented things that you can provide for them and options. And the other is how do we make the work life easier for the team with a reliable piece of technology. So really, like anything, it's focus and game planning, focus on how we can sell more of these cases in
Yep.
here or provide better service. So space, focus, organization, whether you're using something out there, you start doing more lab in-house versus outsourcing, something like an EasyRx, or there's a lot of doctors out there who get creative with how they organize against their schedule. And when
Mhm.
something's due, that's a big one out there. But I would ultimately come back to education and the vision for what you have and what you want to print to help ensure that you're purchasing the right thing. And then we do hang our hat well from our orthodontic lab experience to help teach the team, teach the doctor some best practices, and to lean on us with our training and orthodontic lab background with our teams to help you bring this to fruition, at least how it pertains on the printing
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me to my next point because I know you guys have a lab at Voxel where you actually bring people in. Am I correct in that to sort of help a little bit?
We no longer have a commercial lab, but we do have a test lab.
Yes,
And
that's
there's certain things that we end up doing for doctors. But what it does provide, like if you came in our back of our warehouse, you would, you'd see about 10 printers. You'd see a bunch of different resins. We only sell 5 printers. So we do with our background and acumen, we are fortunate to have a lot of conversations with manufacturers
mhm.
who want us to test the printer, who would like us to give feedback on the resin and how some things perform. It also provides us that test lab to try and keep what we sell in our portfolio to something that we believe in. There's certain reasons why. But yeah, it's a little different. We are a distributor of dental technology, but we're a little bit different in the fact that we have a high touch, high tech approach. I'd call it more boutique-ish
Mhm.
because of our support knowledge. We don't do a ton of marketing. We tend to rely on word of mouth. And that may be why a lot of your viewers or people you talk to haven't heard about us,
Mhm.
but we do like to use all of those tools and tips and tricks that we have to help our customers out there.
Yeah, that's great. And which is why I have really leaned in on you guys a lot because I do appreciate that even if somebody for some reason says, "Hey, this is great, but I'm not ready to do this yet." I know that they're and I get this feedback all the time from my clients. I know that they're walking away with more knowledge than they started with. And I know you guys are givers in that way, and that's a philosophy of mine is the most important thing to me is to give good information.
Yeah.
And I think that just helps all of us out there. So I think at minimum, it's really just continuing to educate somebody so when they are ready, they've got a little bit more knowledge that they didn't start with. So as I've really led you down the printing and the digital aspect, and I know you guys do the X-ray and the scanners. Anything you think we need to know if it was a newer practice or again existing, and they're looking at bringing some of those other components? Because I think when we say digital, I think a lot of times we think printing, but digital is this big umbrella word also. Anything you want to speak to in that or that you think docs need to know about when they're thinking about maybe different x-ray machines or different scanners or anything as they're making decisions in that realm?
Yeah. The imaging conversation is always one we're debating. Do I move up to CBCT?
Mhm.
Should I do that? I've got my 2D imaging, my PANCEPH. You just find things that help more that you are viewing, whether it's
Mhm.
just peace of mind. But depending on what you're looking for, not to get too deep, but we've all heard doctors and other salespeople speak about airway, what's your concern, or what the field of view is, et cetera. But also peace of mind and just seeing more with what you're looking to try and accomplish. There's some great technologies integrating already with DICOM files, with aligners and things like that are out there. I just think that when you're looking at the imaging, it comes down to space and, how some of these units are built and what you're looking for and the quality of the image. So those kind of consultative conversations we can have and not necessarily just try to put you in one unit. We can look for the best solution for you. Dustin Haney, James as well. James also spent a lot of time on the imaging side, running CareStream for a number of years. But Dustin has a wealth of knowledge. The Vodtech machine is huge for us. We have, like I said, 5 different lines. I won't go into each of them, but Dustin is one of those givers. He has conversations with doctors. He really spends time looking for what they want, what kind of softwares will integrate with these different ones. So all that stuff, we can truly still have that consultative conversation, just like on the printer for that side to help the doctor make the best solution for their budget and what they're trying to accomplish. Scanners, when you're looking at those, there's some really cool ones out that are out there, some tried and true scanners, price point. There is a lot of people looking to change scanners out there for various reasons, looking for things that are integrated with some of these softwares that make life a little bit easier to move those scans around for outsourcing or for insourcing. So we can help in that arena too. We've got a new little project that we're excited about that we'll have with
Oh,
the AAO at the show
awesome.
floor. That's pretty cool as well. So again, we're in all of our pieces of the portfolio. It's not just one thing. The element for the startup, like I said, is imaging and scanning. I would think a little differently about printing than waiting till I'm debonding to do my own retainers. And then the production side for the existing practice, finding it to have a way in there. But just what are you looking to try and accomplish? And, can someone help you get there? So educating yourself on those possibilities and then having someone who can actually help you execute that.
Yeah, that's great. This has been just such good information, and I live in this realm every day when I'm talking to my docs, and I know you guys live in this realm too. And I just really appreciate what you guys do, and I feel like again giving some unbiased opinions, but just educating, really helping docs see think past what's right in front of me, but what am I looking for the future? And I think that's such a good way to approach anything that we're doing is, yeah, I understand you want to get into this, but let's talk about your why. Why do you want to do this? Where is that going to lead you? And then aligning them. As we finish up here, if there was any last minute points that we didn't cover or you think that you want docs to you wanna leave with, and any good pieces of advice out there for them?
Um, Educate yourself on what's out there. It can be overwhelming how many different printers or which resin that I use. And there are people out there, we feel like we're one of them, that can unbiasedly help you with those questions to guide you down the right path. And then make sure that you're working with someone who can support your team. Because let's face it, there's a lot of doctors out there who love to print. It's fun. They're scientists. They like to get their hands dirty. And then there's a lot of delegation that goes on too. So make sure that your team is supported in learning, implementing, and even when they are running and gunning, that they have someone who can help them if the situation exists. Also know that when you get into printing, you will become very reliant on printing. It's fun. It's pretty easy. Make plans for how you back yourself up and have some redundancy and growth for that element of the future. It's crazy what we're printing these days. On the dental side, we're printing full crowns, ceramic crowns that you can insurance code for full ceramic crown that are FDA approved for permanent. So it's the printing technologies there. The future is in the material sciences of what we can do, and some crazy stuff going on the dental side already that we've been involved in and are having a blast with. But yeah, education, vision, and focus with the team to turn that technology purchase into some ROI, and you're gonna have a great time. Orthodontics is very cool for what's coming down the pike. Actually, what's already here. It's not
Yeah.
the future, it's here with all the custom digital brackets and more indirect bonding applications and things that are going on there. It's the orthodontics world, the digital technology space is pretty sweet.
Yeah. That it is, and why I love what we do, and I just think there is not a better time to be in orthodontics with just all of the advances that are there. It's just a matter of what do you wanna implement and what do you wanna put into your practice. Thank you so much for doing this. This was great information, and just really appreciate your knowledge in this field, and that you guys are out there just to be able to deliver good information and just make sure that you're really helping push our docs to make good decisions. I really appreciate that.
No, thanks, Jill. We got we're very fortunate at Voxel to have a lot of passionate people about this space, just like you and I are passionate about ortho. We try to help educate and go above and beyond for our customers, but definitely passionate about this and helping people and teaching people what we've learned. We got a lot of people who've been in this space for quite some time with some nice experience to help give to others.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know if you know this, but on Hey Docs, I like to finish up each of our episodes with a little speed round. So, are you up for the challenge?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Describe your style in one word.
My sales style or just style?
Whatever you choose.
Conscientious on the sales side and laid back,
Oh,
just laid back for the most
that-
part.
that's great. That's great. Anything you're listening to or watching right now?
Watching 1923 and Ted Lasso, doing that right now.
Oh,
Listening to a few books, Traction is a big one for us right
Mhm.
now as we're scaling up. We never want to lose that boutique touch, so we're careful about how we're
One of
growing.
my favorites, one of my
Yeah, trying to execute and implement some of those things in. Also, a recent book that I found at a show, Unshackled by Zach Pari, who is a lawyer who, from a wealth management perspective, learning more about some tips and tricks that you can do with your money. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. I keep a list of books because I'm a big consumer of, but I do it through Audible. So I'm a,
Yes.
I'm a big,
The listening.
I
Yeah.
always say read, but it's really, I'm consuming by listening. And I usually have at least 3 or 4 books at any given time that I'm going through. It just depends on where I'm at and where my mindset is at and what I need to be listening to. So that's great. Anything you do just for you.
Uh, Golf. You're further and farther between rounds these days. Everything's busy, but I do enjoy playing golf
That's
tremendously.
great. That's great. Any hidden talent?
I'm more of a jack of all trades, do a lot of things. Well, I can cook a little bit, South
No.
Louisiana, some Cajun dishes, and
Ooh.
it's getting not as good, but I can sing a little bit too.
Oh, nice. So
It's
you'd be
it's
up for
not
a
what it
karaoke challenge if you had to, huh?
it depends on how many adult beverages I may have partaken in the evening, but it's been known to happen before.
All right. All right. And then as we finish up, do you have any big, hairy, audacious goals that you would want to share with us?
Real estate mogul.
All right.
Passive bigger and better ways for passive income.
Mm,
Yeah,
I love it. That mailbox money, right?
there you go. There you
That's
go.
great. That's great. Thanks again for being on Hey Docs. It was wonderful as always. And I know we will be meeting up at a show before long here. So thanks again for being on Hey Docs with us.
Joe, absolutely my pleasure. Always is. Congratulations on all your successes and
Oh,
your
thanks.
team. They're all great. Love working with you guys. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. All right. Until next time.
All right, Jill, take care.
Start this. I'm so sorry. I'm all right. So we'll just start again. All right, Mark. So as we finish up here, I always love for our listeners to be able to reach out to our guests. So I'm wondering if you could just leave us with where people can reach out to you, how best they can do that, how they can find out about Voxel.
Sure, Jill. Thank you. All of your listeners can go to voxeldental.com, look at the different technologies we carry, and even contact us through the website. You can also shop there on the website for a lot of products that you might be looking for
Mhm.
utilizing. You can also email myself, Marc Bacino, at Mark, M-A-R-K, at voxeldental.com. A lot of your listeners on the imaging side could reach out to Dustin Haney at Dustin at voxeldental.com or call myself 469-525-0791. It's on all the time and we're having conversations with
Perfect.
offices on weekends, evenings, whatever it takes.
Wonderful. Great. Again, thank you so much. And I'm sure that people will be reaching out because, again, you guys are just a wealth of knowledge and this is a hot topic in our industry. So thanks for that.
No, I appreciate it, Jill. Thank you very much. You have a great weekend.
All right. Okay.